Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Fall 2023 New Jersey Film Festival Filmmaker Q&A series. Today, we have three wonderful filmmakers here. We're going to be talking about their films for the next 25 minutes or so. And before I introduce you to them, I just wanted to let you know that the New Jersey Film Festival is entering its 42nd annual festival. Yes, I actually founded the festival back in 1982. My name is Professor Albert Nigrin. And back then I was not a professor, I was a graduate student, and I wanted to see good movies on campus. So I used my own measly TA money and I set up a Seat of the Pants Film Festival. It actually was a film series initially, and it grew into one of the largest film festivals in the state and one of the longest running ones. So we're here to champion really wonderful films. And between September 8th and October 8th on Fridays and Sundays, you'll be able to see 19 films which are in competition for best of prizes, best feature, best documentary, best short. And we'll be announcing the winners after the competition ends in early October. You want to get complete information, you can go to our website, which is njfilmfest.com. And you'll have to click around a little bit to find our Eventive website, but I'll show you how to do that if you stick around for the Q&A. And at the end, I'll share a screen and show you how you can do that. Today, we have Julia Ribas, who's to my left, and we have Lauren Stevens below me. They are the producing, directing tandem, and the star. Julia's the star of the film June, which is going to be one of the short films that we'll show on Friday, September 22nd. And Evan Bode is the director of Out of Frame. And I thought these two films are just perfect to go with each other. And I'm so glad that you guys are here to chat about them. Welcome to the Q&A.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Julia and Lauren are out in California, and the film is set in California. And Evan is just got his MFA from Syracuse University. I guess you're still out in Colorado. Is that true, Evan?
Yeah, here for the summer back home, and then I'll be back in Syracuse soon for some teaching.
Wonderful. Yeah. And Evan will be at the screening. The screening on September 22nd is in person. There's a screening at 7 p.m. And then there's also online version, which is available all day on that day. So I'll mention more about that to you guys in a second. But I guess I'll start with Evan, since you're an alumnus of our festivals. Tell us a little bit about Out of Frame.
Yeah, so Out of Frame is my thesis film that I made in the graduate program at Syracuse. I was really interested in experimenting with kind of this mix of live action and animation, and creating a world where I could do a lot of kind of drawing and painting and design in the background, but then also work with live action actors through this kind of story about two paintings in an art gallery. We're kind of being monitored and policed, and have to sort of deal with that and have a connection across the room kind of between each other. So it's very exciting to kind of try and bring this to life in a unique way, and something that I felt was sort of true to a dreamlike storybook kind of type of quality I was going for.
It's a wonderful film, and the image behind me is from your film. And I borrowed it. I'm kind of trying to frame out the curator, because I am the curator too of this film festival. Yeah. But I must say I'm a lot different from your curator in your film. I think I'm a little nicer, but that's okay. We won't tell too much about the film. We will talk about the film, but not really what happens with the curator. But at the same time, June is a film that also features a lot of similarities to Out of Frame. I mean, we have Julia, who plays June in the film, and a love interest enters the gas station where she serves as an attendant. So Lauren and Julia, tell us a little bit about your film, and feel free, whoever wants to go first, tell us about how this film came to be.
I guess Julie might be the person to answer.
Yeah, I'll start it off, and then I'll softball toss it over to you too. But so it's It's there are so many things. When people ask me how did June start, there's definitely a short story and a long story. The short story is that I met the actress who plays Nia. Her name is Nemi Brooks. And I just told her, I met her on set of another short film, and I was costume designing it, and she brought in this pair of red boots. And I told her that we might not be able to use the red boots for this short film that we're working on now, but I want to write you a short film where you can wear the red boots, because I could just tell that she loved them, first of all, and that they made her feel just like the most authentic version of herself. And I think that it's very rare, coming from an acting and also like a writing standpoint. I think especially now when there's like so much pressure to like sell a story or sell yourself as an actor in your certain type, you rarely get to play something that really just feels authentic to you unless you're kind of stretching it for yourself. So I really wanted to just kind of explore a story that felt very personal to me. But then it turned out, it just evolved into something very universal. And obviously that came with Lauren's input. Lauren and I actually used to be roommates.
Oh.
So I showed her the first draft of June, and already with that, she had ideas of ways that because Lauren is an incredible director, and I'll let her talk about that more. But so she saw the script and she was like, "I love this. Let's do it." And so here we are. But yeah, Lauren, if you have anything to add onto that too.
Yeah, please jump in, Lauren.
Yeah, I mean, Julia did write this script and give it to me, so I wasn't necessarily involved in the writing process. I did get a fully complete script, but I immediately read it and knew that this was something that I wanted to work on. I think when I read this film, it felt so incredibly Julia, which was such a beautiful thing to see someone that I care about manifest themselves into a script, which is just the coolest thing. And I think there was so much universal truth within the script and different themes that I really wanted to explore. And it was a joy because by the time she wrote it, I think we had like a month left of living together. So we sat down and just talked hours about the script and picking it apart and just thinking of a million different things on it, and just how even though this felt like such a specific story that was created in Julia's mind, it felt so incredibly universal, in my opinion. So,
well, you know, both of your films are quite different stylistically. I think Evan's film is definitely an animation, live action animation, and your film is a narrative in the traditional sense. But I think the cinematography, and you do a lot with very little. And I think kudos to both teams for making that happen. I knew of Evan's film, or I knew of Evan because we awarded his short film, a spot for Frog, Best Animation at the New Jersey International Film Festival, which is another festival that we run. I mean, the New Jersey Film Festival is biannual. It takes place in the fall and in the spring. We're university-based. I teach at Rutgers University. I'm a cinema studies professor, but I've been running this festival since I was a graduate student. And so the way that, you know, I knew of Evan's film is I told him, do you have anything else? And he said, yeah, I just finished my thesis film, my MFA at Syracuse. And so we sent it along. He's just as magical and wonderful as his other films. So that was a no-brainer, and I invited him to submit it. And then our former judge interns, a student of mine, Max Valentine, who was dear to my heart because I got him as a baby and I watched him grow as a person. And then he went out and he's looking for jobs in the industry. And he was out in Brooklyn, and I guess he's made his way out to California, which is wonderful. And he said, I have this great film, you should show it at the festival. And so that's how I met Julia, and that's how we got the festival. You know, I did not watch your film because I had this connection to Max. I recused myself and I let the jury decide, and I didn't say anything. And boom, the film was selected. They really liked it. It was actually the last film we selected because it came in very late. So kudos. You guys are 19 films out of close to 400 films that were submitted to us. And that means we're only showing 5% of what we got. So you're in really great company. And I think the connection between your two films is really, really cool. And you've both watched each other's films. So do you have questions for each other?
I have a question. One of the things I really love about your film is kind of the setting that it takes place in. It's all grounded within that particular location and stays there the whole time. And I thought that was a really interesting and memorable kind of feature of it. So I'm curious about sort of how that decision came about to set it in a convenience store, a gas station, and sort of the logistics also of filming in that space.
That's a great question. There's a lot of layers to that. I think that I don't really remember where the decision came from. I knew I wanted to set the story in kind of like Central Valley near Fresno kind of area because that's where my mom grew up. So I'm very used to driving through like Bakersfield, Fresno area from LA. And I think it was on one of those drives where I was like, what if, you know, a girl like me lived in a town like one of these that I'm passing, and I'm often stopping at these gas stations and meeting kind of just these random people and kind of considering what might their lives be like.
Mm.
And so I wanted to kind of touch on, so my mom is from Fresno, but my dad is from Barcelona, from Spain. So I grew up with this kind of bilingual, bicultural life. And so those kinds of stories have always been really important to me. Especially like bilingual stories. I feel like a lot of times, we have like characters who are tokenized based on which culture they grow up in. And I wanted to kind of express my identity, which is that like, I switch between English and Spanish all the time. And Claudia is the same way. And, so I wanted to have that, but then I wanted to set it in kind of this context of Central Valley to kind of bring out the other side of my I guess my upbringing, but just like my mom's side of it. So again, like it's like what Lauren was saying, it was kind of like it was a very Julia piece in the beginning, but I think that it became, as more people had eyes on it and more people had creative hands on it, it kind of evolved into something a lot more universal. So yes, and then the actual convenience store, we got very lucky, and I think Lauren can talk a little bit about the process of finding that and also the filming process too. It was a crazy time. I'll throw that over to Lauren though.
Yeah, no, we were looking for locations because we knew that this film couldn't be made unless we found the perfect location to film it in. And we luckily stumbled upon this film set convenience store in Van Nuys online that we were able to meet with and get, and it like looked like this already. We did some adjustments, but it was truly a perfect set for us. And I think it was helpful to have one location because we filmed it all in like one 12-hour shoot and just kind of barreled through it and just made it out with like minutes to spare before the space had to close. So yeah, it was all like a very quick process in that
That's
way.
very cool. And I was able to switch the background to a scene from your film, and I've never seen alcohol in a convenience store at a gas station. So I thought that was pretty cool. Is that something that's very common in California?
I would say so. I think it's yeah, I mean not necessarily at a gas station because I don't know if they really want to encourage people stopping for liquor on their way. But I do think so. If you go into like I feel like if you go into like a 7-Eleven, Lauren, correct me if I'm wrong, there's like a locked thing behind the cashier of alcohol. Usually it's like a locked case. I don't know if you've seen that in LA or beyond, but
Yeah,
Ours was not locked, obviously. It was kind of out in the open. I don't know what the rules of this
I mean,
store
yeah,
are.
no, I know that our the set that we ended up choosing also doubled as a liquor store set. So that's the reason for all the alcohol bottles right behind the counter.
Oh, no,
And
I just thought it was
oh,
kind of cool because I thought, wow, I've never seen that. And I wondered if it was actually the way that it was out there. But anyway, I
a
also,
little bit.
I also, before I let you ask Evan a question, I just was wondering, Julia, since your roots are in Spain, if you were watching the Women's World Cup this morning, which I did. I think it was too early for you guys because it started at 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm a big soccer fan. I used to play. So I got my wife up and we watched, and I won't tell you the result if you don't. If you don't,
I don't know yet, so no spoilers.
all right, no
But
spoiler.
I have been, my family's been, there's a soccer ball
Well, I
behind.
know, I noticed that, and I said,
So
gosh.
I'm actually up in Seattle at my parents' house right now, just visiting for the weekend. But yes, I grew up huge soccer family. I tried playing for a little bit, but then realized I was terribly uncoordinated. So my brother was the big soccer guy. But we've always been big Barcelona fans. Like that is our team, tried and true. We love Barcelona. But I will definitely check out the results and see if I can get maybe some highlights from the Women's World Cup game. That's
Yeah,
so
it's
awesome.
definitely a lot of
Thanks,
fun.
thanks for letting me know.
I think you will enjoy it. But please ask Evan a question too.
Yeah. Lauren, do you have a question? I have a question,
Yeah,
but
I was just curious about the process of combining the like live action shots with the animation. Like the animation style was beautiful getting to watch. I was just
Thank
curious
you.
the process of, is that a style that you normally like create films in? Is that something that you're doing for the first time, or like what was that process like?
Yeah, it's a great question. So for my previous film, Spot for Frog, it's more kind of set within a mostly live action space with animated elements, sort of woven throughout as the character's psychology is kind of coming out of and reflected in the environment. And then in this film, kind of instead of a live action space with animated elements, I'm thinking of it like an animated space with some live action elements. So creating mainly an animated environment. We worked with the actors all in a green screen room, and we have like hand painted all the costumes and had painted makeup on their faces to kind of blend it as much as possible. And I have some of the props here. So the
Oh,
lantern,
cool.
we painted, just like invited my artist friends over to paint things, the lantern and the telescope to give it kind of a texture. It's one of the planets that my sister actually painted
I love
for the
that.
film. Yeah. Yeah, so that was kind of the live action shoot was in front of a green screen, but it was important to me to have kind of these tangible props also for the actors to be able to work with physically and interact with. Um, and then after that, that was just like a 2 day shoot one weekend. And then it was like the next 5 months, it was just me animating in my room, like, and also writing all the music myself and doing the sound design for it. So it's kind of a one-person post-production experience. But because it was me, I was able to alternate a lot between like working on the music and working on the animation as kind of an integrated process. Trying out a lot of kind of handcrafted techniques with actual oil pastels and paints and things for different elements of it. So it has this kind of handcrafted feeling to it. It's kind of about paintings and is also itself kind of self-conscious of the fact that it's a piece of art or a piece that's something someone has constructed and created, similar to the paintings in the film.
It's a beautiful film, and I when I first watched it, I thought of Harry Potter because of the paintings that kind of come to
Mhm,
life. And there's a number of other films that I think too, but yours goes a little bit further, and because it is a love story of sorts, and
mhm,
the two paintings have to find a way to stay connected. And I mean, ultimately, your film talks, it's not just a fantasy or just an animated film. It does have a message. What is that message for you, Evan?
mhm. Yeah, it's a great question. I mentioned, and Julia was talking earlier about kind of the way that people are tokenized and things like that. I'm thinking about representation and of the way that paintings in a museum exist to be looked at, right? And they're kind of confined in this particular box of what they're supposed to be. And so for that people can interpret it, what it means to them and stuff, I'm thinking about kind of moving from sort of an object to a subject as or how can the paintings kind of not just be something that other people look at, but have their own perspective that they're also looking out at the world. And kind of trying to resist this box that's been imposed on them, which I think can be related to gender identity or all kinds of different kind of socially constructed borders that people are trapped in, and policed and monitored by sort of systems of oppression and things like that I'm representing through the curator. And the kind of secondary aspect of it is thinking about filmmaking itself while I'm making the film. So the idea of a frame is like there's painting frames, but there's also film frames. In a way, as a director, I'm kind of like the curator as well, in the sense that I'm positioning actors and framing them in a certain way and things like that. So asking questions about power dynamics, I guess, in that sense, and how people are represented and how to push back and sort of connect people in solidarity in these conditions.
Yeah, very cool. I thought also when I was, looking at these films, I think your two, putting them together was really easy, but of course I couldn't do them as a single package because they're 10 minutes each, more or less, in length. So that's not enough to make a program. So the film that you're playing with is called Hole in the Head, which comes from Ireland. And I did a Q&A with Dean Kavanaugh, who's the director, who's an amazing guy, who also is very talented in putting things together. And I think when folks will come to our screening, they'll see the nice flow from one film to the next, because they all deal with societal pressures. And I think how the characters in their films deal with those. So I'm very excited to show the movies. And I guess I wanted to ask one other thing. Julia, when you're writing the story, is it autobiographical? I mean, is this something that actually happened to you, or is it just completely fictionalized?
You know what? I don't work in a convenience store. However, I think that it's weird, and I feel like I have this kind of like scary gift of manifesting stuff in my writing that will eventually happen. And Lauren knows this because it's happened to us a lot of times where I'll write something and then like a year later, all of a sudden,
Oh my goodness.
something very similar will happen. And so I do think that there are a lot of similarities between my life and June, but it is fiction. Like it is not something that I have personally like plot point by plot point experience. I did have a manager. I used to work as a server at BJ's in Westwood, and I had a manager named Claudia, and that's who she's based off of. And then the relationship with Nia, and also like the reference to Catholic school and stuff, that was something that was very much part of my experience. I grew up going to Catholic school since preschool all the way up until high school. And so I wanted to explore kind of the intersectionality between religion, culture, so like my Hispanic culture, and like the, I guess, Fresno side of my upbringing as well. And then I wanted to explore the intersectionality of those things with queerness, and how do those different identities interact? To me, yeah, that was really important, just because I feel like, and Evan kind of touched on this as well, but queerness, I think, is such a complicated issue. And I think for a long time we've been seeing a lot of one-dimensional queer characters. You have like your token gay character. And I felt like there was a lot of depth and layers missing. And so I think that now what's really great is we're getting a lot more representation with queer writers, queer directors, queer actors taking on these stories. And you know, these artists really understand that queerness is so layered. And I think that that's something I really wanted to bring out in June. I wanted to show that, you know, queerness is made complex by every identity that a person has and how those all intersect. So that was it's like, I guess, semi-autobiographical, in the sense that there's a lot of things that feel very personal to me, but I would say that for the most part it's fiction. You know, I've never had to clean up vomit in a gas station bathroom, thank God, knock on wood. I hope that's not something that manifests for me. But I also want to pass it on to Lauren, because I think that Lauren, you mentioned when you read June for the first time, you know, I presented it to her as like, oh, this is like a queer story just about two friends. But then she also reframed it to me in a way that I hadn't really thought about it before, just about, and I'll let you talk about this too, but like June kind of discovering something about herself and her place in the world. I don't know, Lauren, if you want to talk about that a little more.
Sure. Yeah, I know the question was about, is this autobiographical? And I know I love connecting to a piece that I'm working on and finding my ways, but like I don't speak Spanish. Julia had to write me a whole version of the script with everything translated, and I didn't go to Catholic school, so there are definitely things that like I don't understand about some of the things Julia was writing about, but I was looking at it from a queer angle, and I was able to look at it that way. And through doing my analysis, which like I'm a little theater book nerd, like I will analyze scripts for hours. But something that I found is, one is that it felt like a coming of age story to me in a way where normally you see coming of age stories for straight characters in much younger ages, but I think for a lot of queer characters, that discovering of oneself comes later. And I know for me, it was in my 20s that I realized. So I was able to look back on all of the things that happened to me when I was younger, and oh, all the dots are starting to connect. And there is that coming of age that is more prolonged, where the things may have happened when I was younger, but they're all making sense later, which I felt resonated with June in a similar way. And I know the thing that Julia was speaking about is, I was really interested in the film, in the theme of feeling lost and feeling like you don't have any impact on the world. Specifically for June's character, she has been living in a small town her whole life and hasn't had much anything going on for herself, and feels like, especially like where she is in her life, nothing's really going on. But this interaction with Nia reminds her that she does have an impact on people, and that because of this incident that happened, without giving too many spoilers, because of this incident that happened when they were younger, both of their lives took extremely different paths when they started in the same place. And that so far down the future, she sees someone like Nia and what's going on in her life, and realizing my life does have an impact, and that Nia's life would not have happened, that trajectory, without that thing that I was a part of. So I think it speaks a bit more as well to, especially with the end of the film, realizing that you have an impact on others' lives and your own. So
Yeah,
that was something
definitely.
that was really interesting to me.
Definitely. Well, I love both of the films, and I'm really excited to show them. And I would like to share screens so that I can show our audience how they can buy tickets. And so here we go. I am now showing you my desktop, and hopefully not seeing some of my garbage on there, but here we go. This is our normal website, which is njfilmfest.com. And normally everything would be here, but since the pandemic, we've been using Eventive as our streaming service, and Eventive now does Sundance and major distributors. And so what you have to do is go to our normal website, which is njfilmfest.com, and then click on current events, which just bounces you down one cube. And this is basic information, but you absolutely need to push this red button, which says tickets, info, and schedule, which will now bounce you to our evented catalog page. And so what you will see on this page is all of the individual screenings divvied up by genre, but you can kind of click around, and I recommend going back to festival site, which is the overview, and gives you basic information. And if you're coming to the screenings, you can get directions to the location. You need to register your vehicle if you're going to park in one of the university lots. It's free parking, but you've got to register, our sponsors and our staff. But then you can go to our schedule page, which lists all of the films in a linear way with the program dates and shows separated by a red line with that information. And as I'm scrolling down to our screening, which is on Friday, September 22nd, you'll get information about Evan's film, and then there's a nice photo of Julia, and then of course a photo from Hole in the Head, which is the program. It's about a 2-hour program, and it'll be a lot of fun. If you come to the in-person one, you'll get to interact with Evan, and you'll get to see them on our big screen, because it's nice to be able to watch them online, and you can watch them on your TV using Eventiv's Apple connection. Yeah, you can watch it on Apple TV. But you want more information about each one of the movies, you just click on the film guide button, and you can see information about Hole in the Head. There's a nice poster for June. And then of course we have the picture. Oh, we are showing Spot for the Frog as well as part of our Best of the Summer series, but here's the out of frame. So you can see the 2 actors from that film, and we get to see the Jupiter. I guess that's what we saw in your hand before, Evan. So anyway, this is the basic way to buy tickets at our festival. I'm going to stop sharing. Tickets are $15 for the program. And that buys you access not only to the in-person screening, but to the online one too. And yes, we have a bunch of crazy people that watch the film during the day and then will come and watch it on the big screen later in the afternoon. So we do have, 2 handfuls of the cinephiles that do that. And we have a lady from Oklahoma who watches absolutely everything, but of course she doesn't come to the in-person screenings. If you want to watch everything, you can buy an all-access pass. It's $100. It's a really great deal. You get pretty much to see everything at half price. Well, that concludes our Q&A. I want to say thank you to Julia, Lauren, and Evan for hanging out with me for the last half hour, and I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Let me just